Stephen's joining us on set for Business News. Stephen, you're starting with the troubled Japanese company Toshiba finally reporting its financial results.
That's right. Today was actually the last day that Toshiba had to report those results to avoid being pulled from the Tokyo Stock Exchange. The company confirmed losses of around €7.5 billion for the financial year to the end of March. That's after the conglomerate's US nuclear business Westinghouse filed for bankruptcy protection last year. Toshiba has also been dealing with an accounting scandal from 2015 when it revealed that it had overstated profit figures for 7 years. The good news for Toshiba in these results is that in the period from April to June, it returned to profit, earning around 50 billion yen or around €390 million for the quarter.
Affecting the share price there, is it?
Toshiba shares up around 1% at the end of trading in Tokyo today. That's after a gain of more than 9% yesterday on reports that their results would be validated by the auditors. That risk of being delisted was looming pretty large over their trading in recent weeks. Not such a great picture across the Asian markets, though. You can see falls across the board. There's still lots of investor concern about what's happening in North Korea. In Europe, shares opening in the red as well. Here in France, though, shares in the telecoms company SFR are up 9% at the open. That's after the Dutch group Altis announced that it had increased its share in the firm to almost 96%. Not enough to help the CAC, though. It's still down 0.1%.
Going to stay in France now. The government is promising a new EU-wide plan. Now, this is for taxing companies like Airbnb, isn't it?
This was after it was revealed earlier this week that the rental site paid less than €100,000 in tax in France last year. That's despite the country being one of its biggest markets. Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire told the French Parliament that a joint Franco-German proposal on taxing multinationals like Airbnb, Google and Facebook would be put to an EU summit in September. The goal, he says, is to ensure these firms pay a fair contribution in tax on the business that they do in France.
It's a really French bulletin today, in fact, isn't it? We're talking about Couriers now for the takeaway service Deliveroo. Now, they're in a new dispute with the company here, aren't they?
This is over changes to how they're paid, which the workers say will cut their earnings by up to 40%. Bike couriers have staged protests over the change, which Deliveroo insists offers them more flexibility. Rebecca Rosman has the story.
From Deliveroo to Slaveroo. That's the catchy nickname France's thousands of Deliveroo drivers have adopted for the startup, following a spat over a new pay system they say is leaving them shackled. Under new contract regulations, the company will stop paying drivers an hourly wage and only pay them per delivery made. The move has pushed a number of drivers like Johan Destrumeau away from the service.
Are you going to miss doing deliveries?
No, not at all.
Under the old system, drivers were paid €7.50 an hour, plus an additional €2 to €4 per delivery. But under the new system, the hourly wage is scrapped out entirely. Drivers can instead expect €5 per delivery. Deliveroo CEO has defended the change as offering more flexibility and potentially more money to drivers. But drivers say not so fast.
When I compare my old salary to the new one, I easily lose €150 to €200 a month.
The CGT, one of France's leading workers' unions, has condemned the changes, which they say result in up to a 40% pay cut. Couriers hired after September 2016 have already been working on a per-delivery basis, while those hired before then have until September to sign on to the new contract. Deliveroo experienced a similar dispute with UK workers, but after protests, they were given the option to choose between the hourly and per-delivery rates.
Now, Lego has removed its first non-Danish CEO after just 8 months in the job. Ballypada will be replaced by Niels Christensen, who's the former head of the Danish industrial group Danfoss. Lego's chairman telling the Financial Times that Mr. Pada's short time in the job wasn't a performance issue. It was down to the fact that at 61 years old, they could only expect him to do the job for a few years more.
And finally, from Stephen, despite controversies earlier this year, you'll remember them, passengers are increasingly less likely to actually be bumped from flights in the US.
United Airlines created that global scandal earlier this year when a video of a security man dragging a passenger off an overbooked flight went around the world. Now, carriers had promised to cut down on the practice of overbooking after the controversy. It seems to be working. The proportion of passengers forced onto other flights in the first half of the year was at its lowest level in 22 years. In total, more than 200,000 people took different flights than the ones they'd planned between January and June in the United States, but less than 10% of them were forced to do it.
It's quite a lot of people, actually, though, isn't it?
It is, but when you consider that a number of people that fly in the US over a year, it's a small proportion.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. Steve, we've got business.